over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going up there over the next couple of weeks for Super Bowl 54, opening line report, and our official game preview posted over there. Got some thoughts on today's Butler versus Villanova game. We've got situational betting articles for college basketball, the NBA, and the NHL. Not that far away from my Major League Baseball stuff rolling out. We got daily coverage in college basketball, the NBA, and the NHL. Tons of stuff going on over there. Make sure you head on over and check it all out. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest on the program here today, and that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, kiddo. I mean, still fresh. I mean, let's talk about it. Talk to me in 10 days when we're, just keep talking about this one football game. It gets a little tiresome after a while.
It does. It definitely does. But I think there are some interesting wrinkles to this one from a betting standpoint that we can talk about here before we shift gears into some other sports markets. But before we talk about Super Bowl 54, let's talk about how these two teams got there. Kansas City with some resistance from Tennessee in the first half. Then in the second half, they wind up playing pretty well overall. San Francisco, very little resistance whatsoever from Green Bay. Your thoughts on what we saw in those two championship games?
Well, the books weren't happy. I'll tell you that. Favored in the over in both games. The San Francisco game, really not close. Green Bay had a moment at the in the second half, but it was apparent they could not stop the running game for San Francisco. Just really a poorest performance by the Packers defense. Full marks to San Fran. Kansas City, their game, I thought Tennessee really made a big mistake, and it's funny, it caught up with them. I think I've mentioned on this thing before. Not this thing, this wonderful podcast. We do this thing. Sorry.
That's all good. I get it.
Well, this good thing.
It is a thing. That's very true.
Well, technically it is a thing, yes. I had Derrick Henry on a fantasy football team all year long, and I'd have won the league if he played in Week 16, so I'm partially bitter about that. But I did watch Tennessee on numerous occasions this year really misuse Derrick Henry. Just insane stuff. As great as he was all year long, it's the numbers the kid could have put up were off the charts. I did think that in that game, down 10, Tennessee made an egregious mistake. They abandoned the running game. You're down 10. And once they made Tannehill one-dimensional, it was lights out. I thought that it was too early to give up on the running game. I mean, you just keep running the football, get a field goal, get it to a one-score game. When they were down 10, it was over then. But I know we had talked about this in previous weeks. The week before, I used Kelsey. I know we mentioned that, I believe, on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Said Kelsey over 73 yards, to me, was kind of a stick out, and he went nuts. Then last week, saying, well, if you're Mike Vrabel and you're coming from the Bill Belichick tree, you're going to find a way to take away, the best option. And they spent the week saying Kelsey's not going to beat us, which then would lead you to be careful, the over-the-top home runs, and they got them to Hill and Watkins. But the only thing I would say, and I reserve the right, I really do, to change my mind here in the next couple of weeks because it's a great matchup. But generally speaking, San Fran, I believe, has the better defense. This pass rush is ridiculous. I think Mahomes' ability to move, yes, a home run play or two is still in play for them. But if your quarterback, okay, so well, what about Lamar Jackson? Well, but if your quarterback weekly, I mean, the Ravens are doing it as part of a design that Lamar Jackson is their leading rusher. Patrick Mahomes ends up being Kansas City's leading rusher. So if defense wins championships, and I believe San Francisco has the better running game, I mean, Mostert is not Jim Brown the way the Packers made him look. But I think San Francisco has the better running game. Who you got a better edge, right? Oh, yeah, I got Mahomes against Garoppolo, no contest. But Defense wins championships, and run and stop the run. Early on, I'm looking at San Fran.
All right, a lot of stuff to sort of recap here. First, I'm going to say this. Kansas City, I mean, they basically laid it out from the start of that game that Derrick Henry's going to have to beat a 9-man box in order to beat us, and he couldn't do it. And they played a lot of 9-man box, single high safety. They were not worried about anybody that Tennessee had in that passing game. They were not worried the least bit about Ryan Tannehill. That's probably the blueprint that Andy Reid's going to want to use in the Super Bowl. He's going to say the same thing. If Jimmy Garoppolo beats me, that's fine. I'm not letting the running game beat me. The problem now for Kansas City is that Kyle Shanahan has 2 weeks to look at that and find every little weakness in that defense that he can possibly find. I think for Mike Vrabel, a lot of things caught up with them. Derrick Henry's workload caught up with them. 4th straight road game caught up with them a little bit. And also, look, Tannehill wasn't bad by any means, but you could tell that without the game reps, he panicked a little bit when pressure got there. And he was sacked 3 times for 27 yards worth of loss. The Chiefs did get the pass rush there. They tried to as much as they possibly could while still playing kind of a run-safe type of defense, and it all worked out. And you have to wonder now, Andy Reid, who, again, I've mentioned this stat before on the show, I guess 23-5-1 to the under last 29 games off of a bye. He generally has a good game plan. And I think what Andy Reid tries to do with a defense that is great, is good, is not great, I think he tries to take the other team out of their game plan. I think he did that with the Titans, with the 1 high safety, loading the box, took Tennessee out of their game plan. I think Kyle Shanahan's smarter than that. So while I took an initial position on the Chiefs at Pick'em at -110, thinking the line was probably going to go up a little bit and give me the opportunity to play back on 49ers money line if I wanted to, the more you think about this game, the more you really look at these two coaches and you try to figure out which one is going to be better prepared, because I think both of these teams offensively and defensively can have success.
It's a great matchup. It's really compelling. I mean, there's no way you can't make a strong case for both teams. The one thing I'm looking at is the total. I think this is on the rise, sitting there at 54.5. We know Super Bowls are quirky. We know about the long halftime. It does seem, if memory serves, there is a feeling out process. These games don't blow up right out of the gate, generally speaking. The other thing I throw out as a cautionary tale, and I know we're going to actually just briefly touch on horse racing a little bit later. I play the horses every day, and Gulfstream Park, and now they call it Gulfstream West, but that's Calder Racecourse, which is basically on the same property where the game's going to be played. And every day in South Florida, it's just part of the daily routine down there. Around 4:30, between 4:30 and 5:30, you can set your clock to it. There's a pop-up shower, but they are pop-up showers. Let me tell you something. I mean, it's like a 15-minute deluge. And, and the last time they were down there, remember the Indy-Chicago game, it rained the whole game. So you don't usually see rain in Dolphins games because they usually play the games at 1 Eastern. This game's, I'm going from memory. What's the kickoff? 6:30 something, 6:33, something like that, usually. I'm just saying, I think rain's a real possibility. I don't know what the forecast is going to be, but I could see while they're out there warming up and the tarp's off and everything, when they're warming up, that's about the time that the daily shower comes in. And it usually isn't just a shower. It's like the sky opens up for 15 minutes. Just throwing that out there.
Well, and of course, too, I mean, this stadium is kind of enclosed in the sense that the fans are protected, but the playing surface isn't. So I don't think wind will be that significant of a factor, even if it's in the forecast. But rain very much could be. And then you sort of get into this nitpicky discussion. And again, with 10 days, 10 weekdays for us to talk about this game here on the show, it's kind of a nitpicky discussion. But, some people will say, okay, rain helps the team that runs the football because obviously they're not throwing the football. It's certainly easier to get your hands on the ball and maintain control of it as opposed to if you're throwing it around. Now, the flip side to that, of course, is Well, if it does rain and the playing surface gets sloppy, the receiver knows where he's going, the defensive back doesn't, so that helps the passing game. So
and that's all well and good. That's all well and good because for argument's sake, let's say 80% of the NFL they play on turf, but this is a grass field. So, yes, if they're playing on turf, the field's slick, rain's nothing. Rain actually helps the over because defenders are slipping and the offense knows where they're going. But on a grass field, they rip the hell out of the field in 4 possessions. And, I'll just throw it out there, October 20th, San Fran at Washington. It wasn't windy, but it was a monsoon, and the final score was 9-0. And that was a grass field.
And that was one of those games, too. I remember that one very vividly because San Francisco didn't cover the number pitching a shutout. It was the first time in like 30 years that someone pitched a shutout and actually didn't cover the number in that game. But, yeah, weather could be a big factor. And obviously, as we get some more clarity with the weather forecast, as we get into next week, we'll see how much of an impact that does have with some buyback on the total here. But, there are books out there in Vegas, and obviously you know this as well as I do. There are books out there saying our ticket count is 30-1 on the over. So everybody trying to get out in front of this one, expecting a higher scoring game. And there will be some sharp money that comes back in on the under as we get closer to kickoff here, whether it's weather related or not, just to sort of play against that early tide of the over money. But
and the other thing, buddy, I mean, on an annual basis, it's something about the Super Bowl and that prop, and they all play the plus. Will there be a defensive or special teams touchdown? There always seems to be something in the special teams fray that steps up in the Super Bowl. And I will say this, Kansas City, to me, in the return game has a big edge. And, that may come into play.
Well, and one big takeaway to me here, too, we'll talk a lot more about props next week when we have more of a catalog out there. We can talk about some of the props that you and I like in this game. But, that is a big thing here is that, there are so many betting options for this game. And, that's the nice thing, too, because, look, I will tell you this. Like I said, I grabbed a piece of Pick'em at open. I just wanted to have some sort of position out there, decide if I want to keep it, decide if I don't, because this game doesn't close Pick'em. It doesn't close San Francisco as a favorite, I don't think. So I wanted to grab some piece of it early on, but there's very little equity in betting the side on the Super Bowl. I mean, it's the sharpest line of the year because it has to be, because there's so much money that comes in on the game. So as these prop catalogs start to pop up a little bit more for all of our listeners out there, that's where the value is in the Super Bowl.
Well, there's no doubt. And there have been many Super Bowls, I would say. And I don't know how many generally you play, but I would say I'm in the range of about a dozen props that I play in the Super Bowl when it's all said and done, generally speaking. There have been recent Super Bowls where I sit there, I'm like, and this is, you can make a case for both teams, and this may end up being the case again, where my biggest bet or my position, however you want to call it, is a prop, and feel much more comfortable playing an individual in a game that you're sitting there going, I can make a case for both of these teams, but I would envision that this guy's going to be a significant part of the game plan. I would say, to your point, that they shut Henry down. I don't know if they shut him down. He had 69 yards. I think they got away from the run. He didn't break the long one, but he was moving the pile 6-7 yards at a time. I mean, but what I would say is San Francisco, the last thing we saw was Mostert running downhill. I think Breed is interesting. If Coleman doesn't play, Breed is interesting because Breed was really their number one in the first third of the season. I mean, he's had some electric games too. So if Kansas City's focus here is shutting down the running game, let's see the kind of numbers they put up. I mean, what would you think? Garoppolo probably be something in the 230, 235 range passing yards. You could take a peek with him. I think the Samuel kid, they're going way out of their way to get his meat hooks on the football, and he gets chunk plays because teams are so concerned about the running back. So, out of the gate early on, I'll be interested to see what they do with Garoppolo and a Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I imagine somebody's got this up somewhere, but keep in mind too. I mean, Garoppolo threw the ball 8 times last game. So does that have any sort of impact on what happens with his prop market here for the Super Bowl, assuming that San Francisco doesn't really want to throw the football with him if they don't have to? Will they have to here against Kansas City? Well, I guess that remains to be seen. That is part of the whole game flow discussion. I agree with you on Breida because that's one of those two where I sort of think of him as more of an outside the tackles type of guy at 5'11", just under 200 pounds. And if Kansas City's going to flood the box, maybe Shanahan wants to spread them out sideline to sideline a little bit more, give Mostert some more opportunities between the tackles or, just sort of running off tackle a little bit. I think Breida all of a sudden does become kind of a more interesting part of this game plan, and he hasn't been used much late in the year. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of the season. He did have 8 carries against Minnesota in the divisional round, but that was largely because they had that big lead and didn't want to use Mostert at all. So I think that's kind of an interesting one to look at. And that's the thing, too, is, as these individual player props start coming up here, you've got this up-tempo, this fast, this explosive play Kansas City offense. You've got this methodical ball control, really efficient running game for San Francisco. I think these prop lines are hard to pick. I think the handicap and the game flow is kind of tough to figure out. I think this prop market's going to be really, really challenging overall.
Well, I mean, the Garoppolo thing, and just like Tannehill didn't have to throw the ball the first couple of games. It's all a function of who gets the lead. Well, good luck handicapping that. But, I mean, if San Fran's behind, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They give it to Mostert, and he runs it down Green Bay's throat. All of a sudden, if Kansas City is, put it this way, the more successful Kansas City is on offense, the bigger the numbers that Garoppolo is going to put up. Because if it's a game where field goals are no good, or San Fran gets behind, then he's going to be throwing. The other guy, he wasn't invisible last week. They just didn't need him. Rest assured, Kittle's going to be a monster part of this game plan. I'd be looking at a guy like Kittle. And don't forget, too, with the running backs and the Breida thing, I got to tell you, Marshawn Lynch looked pretty doggone good, coming off the street. Don't forget last year, right, with the Rams, C.J. Anderson, he was terrific coming off the street in the final 5 weeks of the season. And Breida, whatever, I think it was a high ankle sprain or whatever, he was out of the equation for about 4 or 5 weeks. And then, Mostert kind of took up as the 2-back. But this Breida is fresh as a daisy. Breida could be an X factor, too.
Now, there is something I want to ask you about. This is what I kind of teased earlier about, some of the more interesting wrinkles from a betting standpoint here. Obviously you're in Las Vegas where there's always a lot of excitement for this game. The prop catalog has always been available out there, and obviously plenty of different operators. But this is really the first Super Bowl where we have a lot of states now on board. I think it's up to 22 states now that allow some sort of sports betting. And, some places are thinking that, we may have 40 states in the next 2 or 3 years. So what sort of impact do you think that has here on the Super Bowl, where it's not just Nevada and New Jersey and then, sporadic activity in Pennsylvania or West Virginia, something like that. Now you've got an Indiana, you've got an Iowa, you've got Oregon and some of the other states in the Northeast. You've got a lot more states now involved with a piece of this sports betting pie. What do you think kind of happens in terms of the national betting markets here for the Super Bowl with so much more legal money being dumped into it?
And believe me, some of the houses here have properties in other jurisdictions, but it's still coming into the Vegas pool, and they're sitting there, keeping very close tabs on that. In the short term, I'd say that because the game is so big, they're able to massage the money and generate two-way action, and it's a number that's up so long. I don't know that that's a big issue. The one thing, I don't know that it mitigates it, but in terms of ticket count or, where the actual money comes in, if you want to call it public money, there's no East Coast team here. You're talking Kansas City and San Francisco. So there would not be that, if you want to call it an East Coast bias or people, just having a love affair with the team that they see a lot in the East. I mean, it's a quirky thing in that there's no one from the East Coast involved in this game.
No, that's a good point. And also, too, I mean, I've seen some things out there in social media with regards to, what the numbers are going to look like in Reno compared to what they're going to look like in
Oh,
Las
yeah,
Vegas.
I've been up there. I was up there, oh boy, what was it? It was a long time ago, about 12 years ago. And it's ridiculous. Like the Niners in Vegas, might have been in the 20-1 range to win the Super Bowl during the season. And up in Reno, they're 3-1. Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, that market is, that number in Reno, the Niners will be 3 at least.
Well, and two, then you've got the Chiefs. There's kind of a proximity there to a degree, to a place like Iowa, something like that. So, the Iowa books are going to be inflated a little bit with that Chiefs money. So, that's going to be really interesting to kind of watch here too. And, for people that eventually have the opportunity to, be connected in some of these other states, have some friends, things of that sort, that's going to be kind of interesting as we continue to go forward here. But like I said, I mean, this is the first Super Bowl where, last year it was kind of in its infancy, but this year, or at least this NFL season, I should say, a lot more states came on board. So that'll be interesting. Think of something like, Pennsylvania, for example, where, in Pittsburgh, it's an AFC market. Maybe you get some more Chiefs money. In Philadelphia, it's an NFC market with the Eagles.
That's true.
Maybe you get some more, 49ers respect just because, you follow the teams closer in your own conference. I think that's going to be kind of intriguing to see. It'll be kind of intriguing to see what happens. Some places put up props of the total overall betting handle in Nevada. I'm sure some places will put up the betting handle in New Jersey this time around. It's just, first of all, it's nice to be able to talk about this because this should have been legal everywhere a long time ago. But second, I think it's going to be kind of intriguing to see how it sort of shapes the market in those respective geographic locations.
No, it's a great point. You're always kind enough to let me get the word out about stuff we're doing. I would just throw this while we're on this topic. Every Friday I do my radio show over at Sunset Station with Chuck Esposito out in Henderson. On an annual basis, we do Super Bowl prop shows. We go to the Superbook, which is, it's an amazing property. It's if you've never been, you walk in, your jaw drops when you see it. So Wednesday the 29th, Thursday the 30th, we'll be doing basically 4 hours of Super Bowl prop stuff. And then the Thursday show is always great fun. Oscar Goodman's coming by, does the radio show, brings the showgirls, and he's worth a chuckle. And he goes, "What time should I get there?" I said, "Well, the show's at noon. You better get there at 11. It takes him half an hour to walk, 100 feet. I mean, he shuts the room down, and it's pretty cool stuff. So there's that event aspect of, the stuff that goes on for the big game. So I just throw out any of your listeners. I know you're coming out in about 5 weeks or so, but anybody that's coming out, we'll be out at the Superbook on Wednesday and Thursday Super Bowl week. So come on over and say hi if you're out and about.
Yeah, it's I got to watch what was it? It was the Steelers-Packers Super Bowl out there at the Superbook. It's the only time I've been out there for the Super Bowl, and hey, it's as crazy as it seems. And for anybody that may be going out there for the game, or may be in a state with legalized sports betting, the best advice I can give you is download and set up every app that you possibly can. Because if you want to get in line to make a halftime bet, you're not getting through the line. So make sure that you've got all of those apps at your disposal. That is absolutely the smartest thing you can possibly do here.
And generally speaking, you should have 3 or 4, because it's brought an era back that was gone. I mean, a dozen years ago, Adam, you couldn't even take a cell phone into a sports book. Used to go sit. Remember the days go over at the Palms. I mean, sitting in there playing the horses, and somebody call, and I'd have to get up and leave my seat. You'd have to leave the sports book just to take a phone call. Now the sports book is the phone, and you get that ability to shop for numbers, and even halftime wagers. You don't have to get up and get in line. And sometimes for a halftime, you go up to, it's -2.5. By the time you get to the window, it's 3. Yeah, the phone, you get the best of the number too. So highly encourage anybody, and in all jurisdictions, do it responsibly. But if you're going to be in this over the long haul, you will get the best of the number not forget the convenience aspect of it. You will get the best of the number more often than not by having an app.
Well, we'll definitely talk a lot more Super Bowl stuff next week. Like I said, we'll kind of dive in a little bit more detail with some of the prop bets that we have, and of course, revisit all the things that Brian has going on next week. So if you are going out to town, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Blessing. He's always promoting the things that he's doing, but make sure you tune in next week as well and get some refreshers on where he'll be, what they'll be talking about, all that different type of stuff. But something else we always talk about here on the show, Brian, the NHL, 5 games tonight, 2 games yesterday, 2 games tomorrow. The All-Star break starts on Thursday. A lot of teams having their bye weeks here this week. I believe 17 teams don't play a game at all this week. And then the teams that do play this week, well, they'll have some time off after the All-Star break. So games kind of few and far between to a degree, but something I want to talk about here before we talk about tonight's action is we discuss this all the time. We talk a lot of situational spots on the show. These guys are creatures of habit, man. And if you go a week plus without playing a game, rust will very much be a factor early next week for the teams that haven't been playing.
Yes, but the league has done a better job because when they first implemented this, that there was a bye week, or each team got a break. You had teams coming off the bye going against teams that had been playing, and it was just a massively unfair, it was an unlevel playing field. So the league has done a better job now where virtually the entire league, you're either taking your break on the front end, heading into the All-Star break, or on the back end of the All-Star break. And generally speaking, they've got teams that will play, off a similar rest. The league identified that pretty quickly because it was stupid.
Oh, and it was a gold mine. What was it, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was awful.
4 years ago, something like that.
It was awful. It was just unfair. But if you were smart and paying attention to it, it was an ATM machine.
Yeah, it really was. It truly was. And again, the teams correctly bitched and moaned about it as they should have. And, it is something that the league has corrected here. Like I said, we got 5 games on tonight's card. We got a big favorite, Winnipeg and Carolina. I know we're going to dive a little bit more into that game. But overall, what are sort of your impressions of tonight's card?
Well, Winnipeg, it's the mom's trip. I do think the dad's trip is much more effective than the mom's trip. The moms would be, "Oh, honey, you played a good game." The father go, "What the hell did you do?" But Winnipeg's got the moms, man. The Sabres were plus $1.75 with the dads, won in Dallas 4-1, and outplayed Nashville on the second game of the dad's trip, and it was 2 goofball goals, and basically the Sabres squandered a game. But there's something about it. I think you play it blind. I honestly do. And at the end of the season and when it all adds up, you're making money. So, I can't get off it. I'll take – Carolina's playing good, but I'll take Winnipeg plus $1.65. That number's going up too.
Well, and something else that I kind of think about a little bit here, and Carolina's played some tough games here of late too. They played, the Capitals and Columbus. They lost at home to the Ducks, then had to play the Islanders. A lot of low-scoring games here of late for Carolina. So we'll see what they're able to do here tonight with the Jets. But something that I kind of thought about, and something I missed with Tampa Bay on Friday. They were playing Winnipeg. It was a 7-11 stretch for Tampa Bay. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a really, really difficult, really rough and brutal spot for them. And they hammered Winnipeg. Something I started thinking about here is that, and I kind of missed this, and the only team that this applies to here tonight is actually Winnipeg. But these teams do not want to sit on a loss for more than a week. They don't want to have one of those losses fester going into the break. So next year, if this is structured the same way, something for us to kind of file away here, teams playing that last game before the bye or that last game before the break, they do not want to have a loss to sit there and think about. So that's maybe a little bit more of a situational angle I should have mentioned last week. It is something I wrote about in my Situational Spots article. But that's the thing, man. If you're not playing a game for an extended period of time, the last thing you want to do is go into that break on a loss.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I would just throw this one out there as one to watch for. You're always trying to get on the front end of something. The trade deadline's coming up. I think several teams are going to be, hugely involved in the trade market. And I do think after this All-Star break, trades are going to kick in because the trade deadline will be too late for some teams. But in terms of getting on board with something, yes, I'm a Sabres fan. Okay, let's start with that, full disclosure. But, Vegas went in there last week, and obviously we know what happened with the Gerard Gallant thing. But the Sabres, their record, they're 2 over 500. But they lost 3 to Boston, 4 to Tampa, split with St. Louis. So if you take those, and now you got to play them, I get it. But if you took those 8 games out, this team is 10 games over 500 against the rest of the league. And they're 14-6-3 at home. Coming out of the break, the Sabres are going to get Jeff Skinner back. Victor Olofsson, the rookie that was playing with Eichel, he's been skating again and not in a walk-in boot anymore. So maybe he'll be there maybe a week or two after they get back, and I think they'll do something at the deadline. But the only reason I'm bringing it up, mark it down, the Sabres have 9 out of 10 games at home out of the break, and a lot of winnable games, and they get no respect in terms of the number. You're not going to be laying big wood with these guys, but they are 14-6-3 at home and have 9 of the next 10 at home, and this is their season to make a push, and they're like 5-6 points out of the playoffs. I can see the Sabres, going maybe 7-3 in that stretch, and you're going to be getting some pretty fair prices on them. I'll just throw that out there.
Speaking of home, the Vegas Golden Knights are coming back home after this long road trip. They play Boston tonight. What do you think about them tonight? I mean, this road trip started with that bad effort in Buffalo. They fired Gerard Gallant, which changing coaches in the middle of a road trip is kind of a weird thing for a team. What do you think about Vegas tonight? I mean, what's kind of their mindset going into the break?
Well, what I would say to you is, yeah, they're coming home or they're going to Cancun or whatever, but they're finishing this 4-game trip. Then there's the break. And when they come back, they go back east for 4 more. They don't play another home game until February 8th. And now you got the coaching change. They got a miracle point in Montreal. And and give them credit, they fought till the bitter end, but it was Montreal's stupidity at the end of that game. But this team is asleep at the switch coming out of games. At the end of the homestand, they were down 3-0, 3-0, 4-0 after 20 minutes of play, down 4-0 to the Kings. Then it was like one of the gifts from the gods. So you're in the middle of one of these ridiculous streaks where they just weren't getting a memo when the game started. And then Columbus comes in, and they made Columbus plus $1.75 in the first period. Columbus led 1-0 after 1. Then they went to Buffalo, and it was 0-0 after 1, and it was like they won the lottery. But in that game, they were outshot 12-4 in the first period, and Buffalo should have had the lead. Then they go to Ottawa, where Mark Stone was making his big return, and it was the day of the coaching change, and Vegas scored in the first minute of the game, and it was like this collective airs out of the balloon thing, and they played a decent game against Ottawa. But, oh, by the way, in that game, Vegas handed Ottawa their 9th straight loss. So it ain't like anything got fixed. Then they go to play to Montreal, and they got mauled again out of the gate. They were down 3-0 again. I don't know what it is about this team. They just cannot get out of the gate when the game starts. No, I don't know that anything's been fixed. They got three out of a possible 4 points in these last 2 games. And they go, okay, they fixed it. They didn't fix anything. There's a big trade coming from Vegas. Let me tell you that. Because in the last 2 years, if they pulled the pin on the grenade of firing Gerard Gallant, what do you think they're going to do with the team? 2 years ago, they were the ones, they were all in and just missed getting Erik Karlsson. Probably a good thing they didn't. Then last year, they make the blockbuster trade and get Mark Stone. This team is the most active team at the trade deadline because the owner wants to win yesterday, and he's got a short window, let's say the next 2-3 years with Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, they are literally an all-in now kind of team. They'll be really active at the trade deadline.
Anything else about tonight's games that kind of stand out? I mean, the Islanders and Rangers are playing for the 3rd time in a week and a half. So 3rd time in a week and a day, I think. 3rd time in 8 days that they've been playing each other. Islanders are kind of falling off the pace a little bit here, too.
They are, but you go over the total in that game, I believe, and you get a slight plus price at 620. They just did play recently, but the game, the first game that they played on January 13th at the Garden, the Rangers won 6-2. The games at Madison Square Garden are higher scoring. The games on the island when the Islanders have, don't sleep on this. I mean, from a betting perspective, the last change matters, right? The home team, more often than not, can, throughout the course of 60 minutes, dictate the matchups. And the Islanders want to play a defensive brand of hockey. But when they're on the road and the Rangers have the last change, I think higher scoring games at Madison Square Garden, I'd go over the 6.
As we look at last night, both games come out with 9 goals. So both of those fly over the total. A lot of scoring in the NHL this year, as we've talked about before. And I know you're not a big analytics guy. And in fact, you're not an analytics guy really at all. We could have a long-winded discussion about that on the show here at some point in time. But I did see Travis Yost contribute to TSN talking about the difference between expected goals and actual goals in terms of looking at things like shot location, in terms of looking at things like, power play percentages, all that type of stuff, that there have been a lot more goals than expected here. And he was talking with some of the very analytically savvy people out there that cover the NHL about why this could be the case. Is it teams just making fundamental changes about moving more vertical or moving more horizontal with the puck, getting goaltenders moving? Is it about the goaltender equipment size change and that kind of making things a little bit easier? Is it just an overall philosophical change in approach about how teams are carrying it in more instead of dump and chase, stuff like that? But
I'll give you a reason.
Scoring's so high.
I'll give you a reason why I hate I hate analytics for a lot of reasons. All right, the reason there's more goals is analytics. Analytics itself. I've never seen anything like this. League wide, it's a copycat league. You watch teams when they're killing penalties now. They're playing a box. They've always played a box. But the defensemen are out about 8 to 10 feet out into the high slot. And there's a guy living in the goalie's face. So analytically, somebody said, hey, it's a good idea. Let's go like we've got 4 goalies out there in front of the goalie, and the whole thing is taking away shooting lanes. And they block more shots. But when the puck gets down low, the guy's got inside position and screening the goalie. The era I grew up, if that guy's living in front of the goalie, you're chopping him down like a redwood. Analytics is doing it. That's why the damn games score more goals. Guy cuts to the middle. All right, I'm a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. Guy cuts to the middle with his head down. I sit up in the press box at the Golden Knights game. The guy cuts to the middle. You're above it. You can see, it's amazing. If you ever go to a hockey game, sit down low, and you're like, whoa, how fast they're going. Then you go up high, and you see things develop. And it's just so cool, the difference between down low and up high. But when the hair on my arms comes up, when some guy's coming down right wing, got his head down and cuts to the middle, and I'm like, oh, and nothing happens. Man, you go back 20 years ago, some guy's playing on the train tracks, cuts to the middle with his head down. You get what you deserve. And they freely would just take the guy's head off his shoulders. And I'm not talking about concussions, but I mean hit him. Split him in 2. And guys cut to the middle, fearless. Oh, they're not fearless. They know they're not going to get hit 99 times out of 100. The game has completely changed. And if you want to talk about all these things, expected goals and all that, whatever. Listen, see what you did? You ruined my day here. You got me going. All right. This league is a box of rocks. Shots on goal is the most meaningless stat in any sport. It's meaningless. Team could outshoot a team 20-5. And you look at the box score, oh, they killed them. But the reality of it was the team that got outshot 20-5 had 7 scoring chances to the other team's 2. Some guy flips a wrist shot from the blue line. The goalie could catch it with his teeth. That's a shot on goal. Guy in the high slot fires it wide, from 10 feet, and he's trying to pick a corner. That was a better chance than the stupid shot on goal. And if you hit the post, it doesn't count as a shot on goal. I, for the life of me, can't understand, with all these things and all these numbers and all this crap they put out there now, how the NHL, and yes, it's a subjective thing, but how could you not have an off-ice official who has a clue that watches and goes, that was a quality scoring chance? I don't care what the shots on goal were. Tell me at the end of 20 minutes, what were the quality scoring chances? That will tell you how a game is played. And they don't even address it.
Well, I mean, NHL does provide, data. I mean, these guys aren't scraping it just by watching the games. The NHL does provide data, and there are things.
Well, it's not in any box score.
Well, I mean, it's not in box scores. I mean, it's not going to be in the basic box score. It's on ESPN or something like that. But they do provide data. I mean, these guys scrape data from every game, and there are high danger shots. There are medium danger shots. There are low danger shots. There are a lot of analytics out there that do, quantify scoring chances, and that's what a lot of the expected goals stuff comes from. Is the quality of the chance. Yeah, not all shots are created equal. I think it's one of those things where, because of the analytics study, we found that there are a lot more optimal places to shoot from. And it's just like the NBA, where you look at, I saw this chart on Twitter not that long ago. It was a chart of the most frequent shot attempts in the NBA. And like 20 years ago, it was all over the place. Now it's outside the 3-point line and right at the rim, because guys have found that, the risk reward factor of a mid-range jump shot just isn't there. It doesn't make as much sense. You either shoot the 3 or you get it down low and get it inside. And, I think that, I guess I would ask you this, both of us are going to have fundamental, differences of opinion when it comes to analytics, but is the game better now with more scoring and less physicality, or is it worse to you?
No, it's just different. But I said, listen, Adam, and I got people out here that are, relatively new to the sport. Oh, hockey's hockey. No, it's not. The games change. You can't play the way they play in the playoffs for 82 games. Nobody would make it there. And the games are about to change where the teams start protecting a point. I mean, if you watch, I'm telling you, it's a good thing for Minnesota that the All-Star break's coming, because they were about to go on a 5-game losing streak. They had a 4-3 lead last night. I think it was 4-3. They had a 1-goal lead. And 4 minutes to go, they're sitting back and they're protecting, and they have a horrible gap control, and Trocheck comes in and splits the defense, and then the goalie should have stopped it. Stay lucky. He lets it in. So they tie the game. Florida gets a tip-in goal with 4.8 seconds left. You should have seen this Minnesota team. I mean, it was like their puppy got run over. I mean, it's the best thing in the world for them that there's a break, because teams protect the point. The games are about to change. You get a tie game with 6-7 minutes to go, nobody's trying to score. They are just making sure that they don't lose the point. So when you get to February, late January, February, and then the trade deadline, then teams are constructed how they want to move forward. The games change. The games are lower scoring. The teams protect the point. The physicality starts to ratchet up a little bit. They start to it's funny, they put their foot on the pedal from a physical perspective, but take their foot off the pedal in terms of, being aggressive and pinching. In November, the defenseman would read a play, he'd pinch. In February, he's sitting there, I ain't going. I ain't taking a chance. The games change. It happens every year.
Well, that sounds like a good live betting angle for everybody too. Kind of look for some live unders here. In particular, those games that are tied or, 1-goal games, something like that. Teams do really go into a shell. I think I saw something to the effect of when Bjorkstrand scored for Columbus against the Rangers, I think the other night, it was like the first go-ahead goal in the last 30 seconds of a game all year. Something like that. So, yeah, it just kind of illustrates.
I said that to my wife last night because I was watching that, guys. That never happens. I mean, that is such a killer goal. I mean, when you're there and then you have the lead, but I mean, a late goal, because just get the point. Even if you walk out of there and you go, oh, we blew it, we should have beat them. But you got a point. When something happens like that in the last minute of a game or 5 seconds left, that is just getting your head lopped off.
All right, so let's take a look here over on the PGA Tour side of things here. We ran a little bit longer with the hockey discussion than I anticipated.
Well, you did it. I mean,
I know.
You started talking about analytics.
Like to get you riled up.
Well, stupid analytics. Yeah, analytics doesn't tell you. Basketball is one thing. Yeah, where are the guys' jump shots from? Hockey, throw it out the window. I'm serious. It doesn't tell you if a guy's got a heart the size of a grape or a medicine ball. It doesn't tell you who the guy was playing against. And it doesn't tell you is a guy winning battles in the corner. Ugh.
I mean, actually, a lot of it does. A lot of it does sort of look at, defensemen and who they're up against, in terms of line matching and stuff like that. I'm telling you, man, Give it a try. Just give it a read and see what you kind of come up with. I think I could change your mind on it here. I really do.
Anyway, but you and I were sitting here talking before this thing started, like, it never stops. And you want me to start looking at analytics.
I do. I absolutely do. Football's going to be done.
I'll tell you what. I got a better there's a much better chance I'm going to go in the house and put on the 700 Club than to start reading analytics.
What the hell is the 700 Club?
Yeah,
How old are you?
Yeah, well, I did look it up.
All right, fine. Let's talk about the Farmers Insurance Open here out at Torrey Pines. Rory, your favorite. Rom, your second favorite. Some guy named Tiger Woods, who's got, 7 wins here, is the third favorite in the 11-1 range. Very, very good field. Schauffele, Rose, the defending champ. Matsuyama, Woodland, Fowler, Finau, Im, Reed, Morikawa. The list goes on from there. Guys like Brandt Snedeker, who play very well in California, at a little bit of a shorter price here, too. Jordan Spieth, maybe some value at 50-1 on him, although this is a little bit of a longer course, so a little bit tougher for him. But great field. I know you already did a video preview for us over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. What are you thinking here about the Farmers Insurance Open?
I'm thinking, thank God the La Quinta thing's done. I hate that tournament. It's all that was missing last week was the clown's nose and the windmill. When the winning score is like 30 under par. Joke. All right, now we're on to golf. Real golf course. Great field. Tiger at 11-1. I got to tell you, that's actually a pretty nice price. The only rub you get with Tiger is on a week-to-week basis. How is he feeling physically? And he knows his course like the back of his hand, but the way he played in China, the way he played in the President's Cup, the thing that's different about Tiger, if you want to say Tiger is all the way back, that you're still going to have the week-to-week thing. How's he feeling that week? He is hitting fairways, Adam. He is driving the ball. I mean, impressively driving the ball. And that's been his biggest problem. He'd have been, if he never took the stinger shot out of his bag back in the, early 2000s, he'd have gone by Nicklaus like he was tied to a post. But now he's hitting fairways again. So I think Tiger, if he's feeling good, absolutely shows up. John Rahm's a machine. I mean, he's in it every week. Great field. I think there are some price plays. You mentioned Snedeker, although when he won at Torrey Pines, it was the worst weather. It was hideous winds. So I thought of Snedeker. I'm probably going to lay off. The guy who usually plays good at the same price, at 45, 50-1 range, always plays well at Torrey Pines sneakily, is a guy like Mark Leishman. But there are some balloon numbers that are out there that I'm just like jaw-dropped. I think J.B. Holmes has actually played well at Torrey Pines. He's 140-1. Joaquin Neiman's got good current form. The one I almost fell off, I can't believe C.T. Pan played great in the President's Cup, won a tournament last year. I bet this guy all the time, and I didn't bet him the week he won. I still cry about that. He's over 200-1, C.T. Pan. There's some bomber prices. And then the other guy, I mean, we sit here every year and say, wait for Pat Perez in California, and Pat Perez is a ridiculous price. Pat Perez is 125-1. There's some balloon numbers out there that are guys you can actually take into play. And looking at San Diego weather, which is generally just perfect, and the one year it was atrocious, the weather looks like it's absolutely gorgeous this week. So weather is not an issue. And I love Torrey Pines because the rough is penal. You got to play from the short grass. So, if you're doing a reload on a Friday night, go look, and you could say if Tiger's a great rabbit. But pick a guy that for whatever reason, a bad hole here or there. But go after 36 holes and go to PGAtour.com. See who's hitting the fairway. And if you're doing an in-play wager, who's hitting the fairway 85% of the time? Those are guys that can make a run for you from 3, 4, 5 shots off the pace if they're always playing from the short grass, because the grass will grow over the weekend. It'll get even tougher. So always do that. Look for the guy that's hitting the fairways heading to the weekend, and you might get an overlaid price with 36 holes left to play on somebody.
Definitely an excellent bit of advice there. And again, a great tournament here. I mean, look, you got a pretty strong field when a guy like Francesco Molinari is at 70-1. And I know that maybe his recent form hasn't been all that outstanding, but I mean, it's Francesco Molinari at 70-1. So kind of gives you an idea.
You know what, buddy? Yeah, current form, all I'll say is you had the Tournament of Champions and you had the Sony thing. But a lot of these guys are coming off the shelf.
Yeah.
And we don't know, we don't know what they've been doing. They've been probably, some of them have been, skiing in Aspen or, on a yacht or someone's just been flat out doing nothing but working on his game for 7 weeks.
I wouldn't mind being on a yacht right now. That actually sounds like a pretty good idea.
Oh,
you got a yacht?
You get your yacht, give me a call.
Yeah, right.
What am I going to
run my yacht on Lake Erie?
Well, you get a couple of nice days a year out there. Listen, we could go out there. We could put our feet up in nice, gentle ways, and you and I, we could sit there and just scream and yell at each other and scare the fish and talk about analytics on your yacht.
There we go. Yeah, 11-degree wind chill. That'd be perfect for us. We can go ahead and do that.
Or we could go ice fishing. Whatever you want to do.
Oh, God. All right. Well, let's talk about something else in a warm weather climate here. The Pegasus World Cup is this weekend at Gulfstream Park, and we are actually starting to get really into the teeth of the road to the Kentucky Derby. Oaklawn opens this weekend. You've got some other races, Gulfstream on February 1st, Aqueduct, Santa Anita as well. Some important races to kind of start taking shape here in the road to the Triple Crown, on specifically the road to the Kentucky Derby. But I know you wanted to mention Pegasus real quick and just kind of talk about some of the opportunities here in horse racing as we're trying to slog our way through the winter.
Well, the Pegasus, it's a $3 million race, and you get a great card of racing on the undercard, too. We'll do a video at Bang the Book when I get the past performances later in the week. So we will actually handicap the thing. We just talk about Omaha Beach, and there's some high-profile horses, trainers that are in here. But you get some late bloomers and horses that just come out of the gate that have figured things out. Maybe underachieved as 2- and 3-year-olds, like a horse like Math Wizard is a 4-year-old, won the Pennsylvania Derby as an upset winner, and there could be a real nice price play here for you. So we'll watch for that. The other thing I'll say, I'll be like a kid on Christmas morning. 2 of my favorite tracks are Evangeline Downs in the summer months, because that's late afternoon and evening racing, and you get 12-horse fields all the time. My favorite track, and it ain't a contest, is Oaklawn Park, Hot Springs, Arkansas, and most races. I mean, 10, 12-horse fields, overlaid prices. It's tough to play the horses with the takeout, but the pick 3s, the pick 4s, the return is ridiculous. The chalk exact at Oaklawn, is something that might pay $13 at Aqueduct is paying $28 down at Oaklawn just because of the field size. And that Oaklawn opens on Friday. And the road to the Derby, you nailed it. And it goes through different tracks. It goes through Tampa Bay. It goes through Oaklawn. It goes through Gulfstream. It's a great time of year because, listen, American Pharoah bucked the trend. Usually, these horses, the Derby winner may not have run yet, may not even have run a race yet. And that was bucking a long-standing trend. So it's a great time of year. So start watching those. And basically, they all had a birthday 21 days ago. All those 2-year-olds turned 3. And 2-year-olds to 3-year-olds, these horses change overnight. So it's a great time of year to start looking for Derby futures and things of that ilk.
Well, we definitely will have that Pegasus World Cup video over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. That will have an accompanying quick article just with some quick thoughts, some odds for the race, stuff like that, over at bangthebook.com as well. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. It's kind of funny. We were talking before the show, wondering how we'd fill time, and here we've had our longest segment of the year, so I guess we found a way to fill time. I
told you, buddy. I mean, listen, it doesn't stop. We're down to 2. It doesn't stop. I mean, I've had the sportsbook directors on, I do every day, and sure enough, you're down to the championship games. You're down to 2 teams, but literally 2 weeks ago, you're seeing a massive spike in college basketball handle. There are a lot of people who say, listen, I'm not even going to, they'll stick my toe in the water a little bit. I'm probably one of those people. But now what's going to happen? Midstream, people are going to dive in. And, okay, now the focus goes to college basketball. This is an unbelievable thing we're dealing with in this industry. Adam, there are no downtimes. None.
No, there aren't. Although there will be a little bit of downtime for you with the NHL betting podcast that you do, right? You're not doing it over the All-Star break?
Oh, we'll probably no. I think we'll do we can do midseason grades, but I know we'll talk about teams like I mentioned that Buffalo could come out of the break and go on a bit of a heater, and so we'll do that. I do it with my buddy Cam Stewart, who's up in Toronto, and it's a lot of fun. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Blessing. I always tweet them out, but the site is BetChris with a C, BetChrisCanada.net. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're doing the hockey betting podcast, and like us arguing. About analytics right here, it's the chuckle hut, but we'll identify some of those long-standing angles. That's the other thing, why we love the hockey betting so much. But is there's chinks in the armor. You talk about the great job the odds makers do and how tight football numbers. There are things that fall through the crack in hockey. Honestly, this dad's trip I've been hammering. I've been doing, and we're all sending texts to each other, and it just keeps winning. And at some point, wouldn't you sit there and say, okay, hey, yeah, that team's on the road. They're, it's the dad's trip. They're plus $1.75 or plus $1.80. How big a sample size do you need? Shouldn't that thing be worth a quarter, 25, 30 cents to the wagering line? Oh, they got their dads with them. We better knock that down.
Well, we'll revisit all this next week after you read up on some NHL analytics. And as always, we enjoy...
I got a bad connection.
Yeah, okay. As always, we enjoyed chatting here with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, at Brian Blessing on Twitter, and of course, videos over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. Brian, always fun, man. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, bud. Looking forward to see you soon.